Welcome back to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. This time, Barbara Barnett is back. She's going to wrap up Season 2, the last quarter of Season 2. Some other things to check out. You know what? She's a critic. She's a reviewer. Check out Jerome's TV reviews. Jerome will help you navigate through there and find the things that you can spend 4 hours binge watching. Check them out. Jerome's TV reviews, all at IABDpresents.com, part of the IABD Presents network. Some other writing you can check out. Love's Lust Lost. You know, our universe journey. Some people say it's a Star Trek thing. It's part of the IBD Radio Hour. This is the novel, Love's Lust Lost. Learn more about all the characters. It'll give you a little more background. Then when you go back, it'll be richer, fuller. And then when you go see it at Mad Lab, you'll be like, I know all about your backstory. Love's Lust Lost at IABDpresents.com. Also, check out Patreon, patreon.com/IABD. Go there. Great way to support all of us here at IABD Presents Network. Right now, one of the other people we'd love to support and hear from is Barbara Barnett with the Season 2 fourth quarter review on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. This week, we're back with Barbara Barnett for our fourth quarter recap episode. Barbara Barnett, author of The Apothecary's Curse, author of Chasing Zebras, Guide to House MD, the television show, executive editor of Blog Critics Magazine. Anything I should be mentioning that I'm leaving out?
No. I think that's a lot.
Well, good credits, though. It certainly proves your bona fides in television reviewing and writing in general and storytelling.
Oh, you forgot to. I always mention this part.
Mm-hmm.
Bram Stoker
Award-winning. Finalist.
Bram Stoker Award finalist.
That's awesome.
For The Apothecary's Curse.
Yeah, you should absolutely make that part of the introduction from now on.
Yes. I have been encouraged to do so. Anyway, yeah. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am well. I am here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
This last quarter of Season 2, what did you think?
So I think it had a fairly strong ending, but too much of repeating themes, I thought.
I think that's fair. I mean, Star Trek frequently repeats, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there were any episodes in this run that were, like, really, really great. Like, I think the highest ranking episode from this was 7th overall for the season.
Which one was that?
Assignment Earth, the finale.
I'm
still disappointed it never got its spinoff that it was supposed to be the backdoor pilot for.
Yeah. Oh, Gary Seven.
I love Gary Seven and Roberta Lincoln.
Yeah. So I think this part of the season was characterized at least a couple of times by, and with really good intention, to take a look at Earth history from an alternate history perspective, or an alternate universe perspective. So we see that in from Patterns of Force.
Well, Patterns of Force was but it had issues. But yeah, no, but we also talked about in the last batch of episodes how there's usually like the one version that's like the really good definitive version. Like we talked about Gamesters of Triskelion was not it, but you really like Plato's Stepchildren, I think it is, as the one with the kiss. Well, I think of the Gary 7 Assignment Earth as the really well done right time travel episode of the original series.
Right. Yes.
That's the one I measure all others against.
Okay.
Of the original episodes.
Yeah. I think that's fair. So I think, they did that with one of the things, and again, from the perspective of watching that episode as a kid, it was real, even as a kid, it was obvious what the metaphors were.
Sure.
The Zeons, Zionists, right? I mean, wow. That was like so pretty obvious even to my 11-year-old sensibilities. That was just really weird.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I like this episode for the message. I like this episode for the characters of Gary Seven and Roberta Lincoln and Isis the Cat.
Oh, you're talking about Assignment Earth. I'm talking about Patterns of Force.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Patterns of Force, absolutely. That was major hit over the head. And I don't like this theory. I think Parents of Force is the one they name it in, but I hate this thing that they're like, oh, there's this trend where planets develop exactly like Earth with the same political parties and
Right, and they did it
symbols
twice.
and language. They did it twice in a short time of this season.
Yes, and I think that's what this part of the season is notable for.
Yeah,
Because it did it not once but twice.
Bread and Circuses, similar.
Right, where they did it,
Yeah.
and I still remember it was no, not in that one. It was the other one. Not Bread and Circuses. Uh-oh.
The Omega Glory?
Was that the one?
That's the one that ends with the Constitution, and
right.
That was so bad.
Yeah. So the
So
Yangs,
bad.
the
Yes.
Yanks, and the Comms, the Communists.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you have So that one I would, and then the E Plebnista. I still remember that from when I was a kid.
Ugh.
E Plebnista. I was like, what? What?
When we reviewed the Omega Glory, I'd say the first 2/3 of the episode I was pretty on board with the story,
Yeah.
and then you get to the final twist where they bring it out, the Constitution and everything, and it just
Blah.
really sucks. Completely
Like,
ruins the
really?
episode.
Really?
Yes.
So I thought that and Patterns of Force were almost like, okay, let's just plug in another time in American history or world history.
Bread and Circuses is just Roman Empire.
Well, which they did 5 bazillion times.
Right.
And as you said, Plato's Children was
Yeah.
a much better ancient civilization.
So if we're looking at the last 7 episodes, we've got 3 that basically are retooled humanity. From that perspective, there are.
And then there's the Ultimate Computer, which I remember having thought that was pretty interesting because it was different a little bit, and the idea of the machine. But again, it was a retread.
I like the character of Daystrom, though, in the Ultimate Computer. There was just... it wasn't a great episode because of a few things, but I think parts of it were good. Like I said, I like the character that was the guest star, the creator of the computer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did too. I very much did. But again, I thought it was a bit of a retread. But William Marshall is a terrific actor, or was a terrific actor. I do not believe he is still living.
Probably not. Most of the people that guest star here are not.
But he was great. I remember the actually noting the fact that here you had it was sympathetic. I mean, he was not a bad guy.
No, his intentions were good.
And as an African American in a lead role in the 1960s on a major television drama. I mean, that just very, yeah, they did, of course, Bill Cosby in I Spy, but it was rare to see an African American guest star like that on a TV show.
As a brilliant scientist.
That's what I mean. You saw African Americans all the time, but not as brilliant scientists. Mm-hmm. That was very, very unusual.
One of the many things Star Trek got right amid all the things they got wrong, which is plenty.
Yes. So I kind of all of the episodes, I kind of think that one was, that and the finale were the two strongest to me.
So we had Assignment Earth as the strongest of this batch. We had Ultimate Computer as the third strongest, with one in between them. Could you guess what we had?
I was going to say, are you going to make me guess?
Yes, it's fun.
Well, it wasn't Bread and Circuses.
Nope. And it's not the Omega Glory.
So, Return to Tomorrow.
No, sorry.
Really?
No, it was the other one. Because you only had you were down to 2 choices. By any other name.
That was good. That was good. I like that one.
So, yeah, Assignment Earth by any other name and Ultimate Computer, when we look at the season as a whole, there's only one other episode we have in the middle. Like, those 3 are all grouped together about a third of the way down the season for our overall rankings. And I think they're all 3 pretty solid episodes.
Yeah.
Not the best, but certainly not the worst.
No, I would agree. Yeah, I don't... The thing with the... it's like, again, they've done this before with the hosts. Mm-hmm. It's just too often done.
It is. Return to Tomorrow. Is that the one you're talking about with the disembodied
Yeah.
energy? And that's one with Diane Mulder, who, of course, Dr. Pulaski on The Next Generation, and then she also guest stars in a season 3 episode as well.
Yes, she does.
We liked her in Return to Tomorrow. She was good. And Mulhall. But yeah.
What was she? Okay, what did she play? Oh, she was the empath, wasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
That one I remember
Whoa.
being very good. We'll see when we get to it.
I can't wait till we get to season 3. Because I thought season 3 had some really excellent episodes.
I can tell you, as the group that I record most of these with, we have started season 3, but we've only watched Spock's Brain, and it did not go well.
No, not good.
No.
Well, here we're getting into the whole Nurse Chapel is in love with Spock thing, which I never liked.
No. If they'd done it better, if they'd only done it better.
Yeah.
Develop the feelings, not just...
Well, but you know what the thing is that Chapel... So I think what happened was they realized, Roddenberry and crew and Desilu and NBC probably realized that there was a huge chunk of females, teenage girls and preteen girls, who loved Spock. Maybe their moms were into Kirk, but who were they adored Spock. So they needed an avatar for that audience.
Sure.
Right? And so that's, I think, giving Spock that, giving voice to those who were like, wow, Spock may be logical, but man, he is really hot. Now, I shouldn't say, that's not the right word. It really magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put the hot thing in there, but magnetic. And I think that she spoke, she was kind of that avatar.
Sure. And I think that's fine, but
yeah,
you could have done it better.
They could have done it with Jill Ireland.
Sure.
She would have been better.
Or just, got into the complexity of the feelings. I mean,
yeah.
They never explored the complexity. I mean, I get Spock is a complex person, and so maybe she's attracted to that, but we don't get into the complexity of her feelings. It's very superficial. It's almost, It's just like a girlish crush as far as it ever gets on screen.
Right, and so then by the time we get to Spock's Brain, you have to really believe in that attraction or her feelings. And it could have been an outstanding. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm talking about a season 3 episode.
That's okay. We'll get to Spock's Brain soon enough. So back to these.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
See, I wanna not talk about it.
No, we agreed Assignment Earth by Any Other Name, Ultimate Computer aren't terrible. We agreed that most of the other ones were. We haven't talked about Return to Tomorrow yet, which much other than that Diana Mulder was in it. That was the lowest ranked for us of this last batch. What in particular, besides just the disembodied energy, did you not like in it?
The whole Nurse Chapel thing kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Oh yeah, that was that episode. I'm sorry. So we were talking
it carries on in Spock's Brain.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
This is the beginning.
We saw it back in season 1.
Yeah, but not to this
No.
extent.
Right.
You saw that they were, there was a chemistry there, but not this sort of. So, yeah, I didn't care for that relationship at all. What I did like about it was the alternate bodies, and again, Trek did it much better in other episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Where Kirk and Spock were in other bodies.
Yeah, just the way they did them with the weird glowing orb thing just didn't feel all that interesting.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I did like Hennock, though. There was certain magnetism about Hennock. Kind of an evilness. And Nimoy looked like he was having a great time.
Well, he's just a great actor. And you let him explore outside of the normal restraints that he has. He certainly enjoys that. To get the play a little above and beyond.
Yeah, but I mean, the body swap episode with the aliens thing, there's so many of them.
Yeah. And they're
I mean,
never very good.
I thought it was pretty good, but not, not the best of the genre, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that this whole series of episodes, as I was rewatching them, I was like, yeah, okay, I remember what this one was about. Shh, fast forward, fast forward. And then there are some episodes that I could watch beginning to end 500 times in a row.
Would you rank this batch above or below the last batch, the third quarter?
Ooh, let's see.
Because I recall we talked about the third quarter saying that was probably the worst quarter of the season. Would you care to revise that?
I would rank it. See, I have a problem with ranking it above any segment that has in it the trouble with tribbles and a piece of the action.
I do think this quarter is a little bit better because we've got those 3 pretty solid episodes that are ranked above everything from that third quarter except for Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah, I guess I would have a hard time ranking any. I mean, and I also like piece of the action.
Sure.
So I would have a real hard time ranking this section of the season above that one, just if only for the amazing Trouble with Tribbles.
But we can't agree, I would assume, that the first half of the season, if we're looking at halves, much better than the second half.
Yes, without question.
Yeah.
Without question.
Well, and how much of that do you think was them really running out of ideas for the series as a whole? Or how much do you think it just came at the end of a really grueling season where they did a lot of episodes and were constantly fighting for their own survival to stay on the air? I mean, the emotional toll of everything they were going through, I feel like there was a lot of reasons to expect they would be run down at this point.
I mean, it's 26 episodes, right?
Yeah.
It's a long, long season. I think the creative energy, they knew they were doomed.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they thought they were going to not be renewed.
Well, and NBC thought they weren't going to be renewed. The Trumbles with their letter writing campaign and their bumper stickers on the exec cars kept it one of the very few examples in television history of fan response actually having effect on renewal.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, they were sort of playing out the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think that happened on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. as well, when it got really stupid in its third season. I loved that show. That was my first. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. was my very, very, very first TV series love, and I was like 7 when it came on. It was absolutely, and then it was really good. The first season was great. Second season was excellent. The third season got really spoofy and stupid. And maybe that's where my whole thing about, if you're going to do a series that's going to have some comedic elements, don't let them rule.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a drama. Let the comedy be organic and not forced. I think that's what the Orville does. I think it tries too hard to be funny. And so The Man from U.N.C.L.E. got really stupid. But anyway, but that was kind of what happened back then. You just didn't know if you were going to get renewed.
And they weren't good at communicating those things to people. And, of course, in the days before Internet, it was a different story.
Right. And both Star Trek and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. had huge fandoms even then. I mean, I wasn't part of those because I was, like, really, 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 really young. But just happened to have a mother who was a TV addict. And I watched what she watched. My dad watched the Westerns, and my mom watched all the cool stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that they kind of were phoning it in in a creative way.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they had managed the series a little better, but I think there are a lot of legitimate reasons why they would phone it in at the end of any season. I mean, if you look at the first season of Star Trek as well, there are some gems at the end of the season, but there's also some really bad stuff from the end of the season. I think you get to the end and you're worn out, and oh well, what can you do? You just got to put it out there and see what happens, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Thankfully nowadays we have many shows that are allowed to do much shorter seasons, and the creative team can be refreshed between.
Oh, yeah. And I think that really makes a huge difference. And I think that has been a big contributing factor to TV just being better in general, is the management of the seasons.
Yeah, when I think of the best shows on television, it's never one that has 24 episodes a year.
Nope. There are some that have. Some that I have adored, including House, which didn't have 26 episodes, but it did 24, I think, its first 2 years, and then 22 the rest of the run.
But back when House was on, there weren't a bunch of shows doing 10 or 13. It was still pretty normal. Most
Correct.
shows were still doing 22, 24.
Right.
Whereas, nowadays, the broadcast networks are about the only networks still doing those long seasons, and everybody else has decided 10 to 13, if not fewer, is a really good number.
And they separate, so they do a lot of, like the half season idea, I think has helped.
Like what ABC does with Once Upon a Time and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where they'll do half a season at a time.
Yeah.
They're still making 22 episodes a year, but yeah, I think thinking of it in terms of those limited arcs instead of every episode having to be standalone,
Right.
for 26, that helps creatively.
And there's also a difference now, too, because so much more of TV is serialized storytelling.
Which is a superior way to tell a story, in my opinion.
Without a doubt. I think even, to me, I like reading detective novels, but British detective novels. And the reason I like British detective novels, procedural detective novels, is because they really aren't procedurals. They're long story arcs with character development framed around these crime cases, detective cases. And I think that's something that House did really well, and something that really good storytelling, kind of can blend the two well. I know you and I talked several years ago about becoming disenchanted with Elementary because it had so much promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to do a serialized show, don't put it on CBS.
Unless it's CBS All Access, because Star Trek Discovery is highly serialized.
It is.
If only CBS All Access was an actual business and not just a marketing ploy. Not a marketing ploy, negotiating tool. Then, that frustrates me more than anything, is that Discovery is only around until CBS All Access gets what they want from the cable and satellite companies. Because All Access is only there for them to hold up to those companies and say, look, this many subscribers will pay $6 a month for us. You should give us $6 per subscriber as well. They were committed to building a slate like Netflix or Hulu. I think the anger wouldn't be there. I think the anger is because it's so blatantly not geared towards that you're getting the anger.
Yes, I agree.
We see through the bullcrap. Quit trying to do it. So Star Trek. That was related. We've talked about Discovery on this podcast before.
Definitely.
We did a special episode.
So I have a question for you. Speaking of Discovery and speaking of the Orville. So which do you think is the heir apparent to the original Star Trek?
Funny you should say that, because I recently published an article on Blog Critics Magazine about if Star Trek Discovery was the worthy heir apparent, and then at the bottom I just mentioned as almost a throwaway line, the Orville's not the heir apparent. Whatever.
I wouldn't have published it if it had not said that.
No, but I think while the Orville is very much in keeping with what TNG was, but then adding the modern comedy dialogue, it doesn't necessarily capture all of the aspects of the Star Trek universe the way that because it's really a Next Generation parody almost, and it doesn't really serve the rest of the franchise. Whereas Discovery, while being its own thing, is very true to the spirit and the message of the original and everything that came after it, and kind of looks at the franchise as a whole, and fills a gap in the history, but also like really, really does its own thing as well. I mean, I really, really loved the first season of Discovery, and the more I watched, the more I realized how brilliantly interconnected it all was. There was like one standalone episode in the 15 episode run. Everything else was just one story arc.
Yes.
And even though the first and the second half of the seasons look totally different at first, like, oh, the first half's about the Klingon War and the second half's about the Mirror Universe, by the time you get to the end, you're like, no, these things were super interconnected from the beginning. These aren't two separate stories. So, and the finale, the cliffhanger last shot we get was just, so much promise for season 2 and how they will tie it further into the original series.
Yes.
I just can't wait. Are you familiar with how it ended?
I'm not. I haven't finished watching the first season.
Would you like me to tell you, or do you want to be surprised?
I want to be
okay.
I want to discover.
Then I won't say anything other than that they're definitely going to have to cast some characters we are already familiar with. They have to. They have to in between now and season 2. And so I'm just super excited to see more how it folds in.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to finishing watching the season.
Yes.
And I agree with you that the Orville is... So to me, the Orville seems like fan fiction.
In a way. I could see that.
It is. I mean, it's fan fiction. To me, it bears more resemblance to Galaxy Quest.
See, I went into it thinking it was going to be Galaxy Quest the series. I did not end up feeling that way after watching it. I think it's got some humorous elements like Galaxy Quest, and I see where you're coming from, that it's almost fan fiction, and I'm sure that was kind of Seth MacFarlane's mindset in developing it. But I also think it is starting to build its own world with its own characters, and it kind of stands alone there, even though it is borrowing heavily from familiar franchise territory.
It is. I mean, even its theme song, but the humor is so forced.
I disagree with that. I really enjoyed the humor.
I love Seth MacFarlane stuff. I do. I'm a big fan. But I was, like the one episode 8, it's like I noted that was the episode, was the first episode for me that had no cringe-worthy moments. When you've got cringe-worthy moments in every single episode, that's not an episode. And again, it's subjective.
Sure.
In my subjective opinion.
I enjoy the comedy, and I think overall it's stronger that he's sticking with, that he's using his own style in making the show, than it would be if he was trying to copy somebody else's style.
Definitely.
So I think that's where I enjoy his dialogue. I like to describe it as the Next Generation with better dialogue. Now, I do think the Next Generation had some better stories, although the Orville, I thought, had a few really great stories in season 1. But yeah, I like to say it's better dialogue than Next Gen, because Next Gen sometimes would just be so stilted and so overly formal. And this is more like, no, this is how people talk. I get it. This seems more natural. I am going to leave all this in because the Orville and Discovery are totally relevant to the topic of Star Trek, whereas I cut when we talk about other shows sometimes. But I do want to get back to these other episodes before we wrap up. Because we just kind of briefly glanced at all of them. Is there any one or two that you want to get a little more in depth that meant something or said something, good or bad, to you?
Yeah, I mean, none of these were memorable. The Ultimate Computer and Assignment Earth. Gary 7.
Yeah, that's memorable.
And the Ultimate... I really liked the Battle of... I like the fact that Kirk got this computer, that he understood it enough to figure out how to defeat it in the end.
In the Ultimate Computer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good. I thought that was very 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I think that maybe... I mean, obviously that movie came later, but was the book out by that point?
Not much. 1968?
Oh, was it that early?
Ultimate Computer aired in March of '68. So 2001: Space Odyssey
was 1968. So yeah, they wouldn't have seen it yet when it was written, but certainly if you were in sci-fi circles of the day, that was on people's minds. That would have been something they talked about.
So it came out, it was released. When was it released?
May 12th in the UK. On
Okay.
IMDb says in the UK. I don't know why they don't have the US release date at the top.
And it had already been written by Arthur C. Clarke.
Right.
So,
well, knowing the movie, I found that it looks like it premiered in April in the USA in a limited run. But
okay.
Early April. But yeah, the book would have been out. People would have been talking about this movie coming out, so maybe Star Trek would want to answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, especially with and the teleplays by D.C. Fontana. So you would imagine that,
I used to see by D.C. Fontana at the top of a IMDb page and go, okay, this is going to be a good episode. And she wrote a couple of them, but man, most of her episodes are terrible. I don't know why I had this view that she was one of the better writers for Star Trek.
Well, because she wrote so many of them. And she was also, I believe she was a science fiction writer in her own right.
Sure, but man, the majority of the episodes she wrote are not good episodes of Star Trek.
No. But I mean, there's not a lot of really deep, except for maybe The Ultimate Computer, which definitely had implications. Again, it was unique enough that it spoke to the man versus machine. Computers were just beginning to become a thing, and in the public consciousness. And what if a computer became so powerful that you couldn't control it? I mean, you've got the Cylons, you've got Blade Runner. I mean, you've got, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I mean, all of these writers and creative people were coming up with, whoa, we have computers now. What is that? What does that mean for us as humanity? So I thought this was a really good take on that.
Yeah, and it was very clear in these episodes that they did not actually understand where computers were going. But for their era, it was an interesting take.
I mean, most people's pop culture's understanding of what computers were all about were, from Isaac Asimov and Arthur Clarke, and there's so little that was really, wow, we have computers. What is that going to mean for us? And unless you were at MIT or Caltech or whatever, you really had no idea.
No, I understand that. One other episode that we just kind of touched on, Bread and Circuses, that gets into some Prime Directive stuff.
It does.
Besides just the parallel Earths.
Yes, it does. And I think I mentioned that at the beginning of the discussion.
Yeah, we just kind of touched on it and moved on. You want to talk about that?
Sure. I always like episodes where they deal with the Prime Directive. The whole thing with the Children of the Sun. That whole... No, was this the Prime Directive one?
There was a deal with the Prime Directive because there was a Starfleet officer that he had brought his crew down and had them fight with the gladiators.
Yes, right. There were a couple of them in this group of episodes.
That was the one I found most interesting, though, because it was... I mean, well, obviously the Mega Glory, there's also a Starfleet officer interfering with the Prime Directive, but that one I kind of dismissed because it was just such a bad episode. But Bread and Circuses, I feel like there was something there, but it bothered me that there was a Starfleet captain who's like, yeah, I'm just beaming my crew down and letting them fight to the death, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Right.
I don't know, I didn't quite buy that as a legitimate choice that a Starfleet captain would make.
No, because that would be so against what everything that they're supposed to be doing.
But do you sacrifice your crew to protect the Prime Directive? I mean, in this case, I feel like there was another way, because he's just like, called him to beam down, whatever. But seriously, if you're in a position where you either let your crew die or you'll pull the Prime Directive, we always see Kirk find a way to cheat it. But if it was truly a no-win scenario, should you sacrifice your entire crew just to keep that secret?
There's a whole question about in Judaism from the time of the Holocaust about, how is it if there's no other way but to hide, no other way but to hide your religion, or to become, or say the same thing during the Inquisition, to become Christian was the only way to save your family and save yourself. Do you do that, convert your entire family to save it, or do you stay true to the faith and allow yourself to be killed, executed? And I think that there's and you should say the same thing of whole countries at war. Do we lay down and become slaves, or are we better off fighting to the end? So that is the question: is, do you sacrifice yourself to adhere to an ethical or the moral high ground?
Yeah,
and
I think everybody's got an opinion on that.
Yeah.
But if you think you have an easy, certain answer, I think you haven't thought about it enough.
Right. There is no easy answer to it. There's always going to be second guessing. There are always going to be doubts.
Mm-hmm.
And, did I do the right thing? And there isn't an easy answer. And there's often not one answer.
And those are the issues that I love, that I can just sink my teeth into. And I just love it when a good writer explores them properly.
Yes, I would agree. Okay.
Which was not the case here, but...
No, it was not the case here. But that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing to explore.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts you want to touch upon before we wrap this up?
No, I think it was a pretty weak series of episodes, as you can tell. They did not engage me in the way that other episodes did this season.
Overall, do you think Season 2 was better than Season 1?
Ooh.
Or the other way around?
Okay, now this I can be.
I know, this is and that's not an easy question. It really isn't.
Okay. Season 1 is better.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your reasoning?
Counting the number of episodes. That's what I was counting.
Uh-huh.
That I thought were really excellent. And comparing it to Season 2. And there were more in Season 1, many more in Season 1 than there were in Season 2.
See, that was a major deciding factor for myself as well. But I thought while there were a lot of great episodes in Season 1, there were only like 3 maybe that were really, really excellent. Whereas when I look at Season 2, I think there are like 5, 6, or 7 that are really excellent. And then when I look at the weak parts of Season 2, I'd rather watch the Mini Syndrome or Cat's Paw than the bottom 3 of Season 1, Charlie X, Alternative Factor, Tomorrow is Yesterday. So I feel like Season 2 had some higher highs, and Season 1 had some lower lows, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I would just base it on the number of, whether evenness of storytelling, no. Are they still trying to find their way? Yes. The excellent episodes are really, 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 really good. The bad episodes are forgettable. But the memorable episodes, I think there are many more of them in Season 1 than there are in Season 2. Just my opinion.
Okay. I think Season 1 and 2 are both, on the whole, pretty decent. So I think there's an argument to be made either way.
I think our criteria are slightly different.
I think so, too. I agree. But I'm certainly not going to begrudge you that because Season 1 was... Now, if you were trying to tell me Season 3 was the best season, then we might have some issues. But if you want to pick Season 1 over 2, I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think so. Season 3 had some decent episodes in it.
Yeah. I've only seen about half of Season 3.
That's what you said.
Random episodes, not like the first half or anything. And I know there's some really good ones. I'm curious to see where we feel they rank overall because Season 3 is always considered such a crap compared to the other two. And I mean, Spock's brain was such a terrible starter. But, we'll see how many really good episodes there are where that shakes out. I just can't imagine it being as good as seasons 1 or 2 overall, based purely on impressions, first impression or preconceived notions. And then we have the animated series after that.
Oh, well.
Oh,
Which I did not see.
I have never watched an animated episode all the way through, but I've read a bunch of the novelizations, so I'm familiar with a bunch of the stories. And every episode of season 3 I've read extensively on every single episode, what they are, what's in them, even if I haven't seen them. Because back in the day, that was easier to get a book about each episode than it was to get the episodes themselves.
That's true.
Last question I want to ask real quick is we are recording a series of special episodes of the audio story records that were released in 1975 and 79. Are you familiar with any of those? Have you heard any of those?
No, I've not.
They are, we've recorded 2 of the 3 already. And if you get a chance, you might want to check them out. You can always give me your thoughts, but they're not great. I mean, they don't have any of the actors. But of the first, there's 11 stories total, and there's 7 on the first 2 records. 6 of those 7 were written by Alan Dean Foster, who wrote all the animated series novelizations. So they're pretty decent in keeping with Trek. They're just much shorter and not great voice acting work. But then the other one, man, they did an audio episode where they met a wizard, and their spaceship was powered by magic, not science. They never evolved scientifically. And Spock says, "Oh yes, Captain, it's not science, it's magic, so we need to use magic to solve their problem."
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Magic is science we do not yet understand is like my mantra as a novelist. I mean, that is like what I live by. Nothing that I write, nothing as magical or as fantastical as it may seem on its surface is ever.
Yeah, and so this episode treated magic as if it were on the level. Like, you can either have science or you can have magic. They're both legitimate paths. It was really bad. It was really, really bad. But I grew up with, I had one of the records as a child on cassette tape, and I listened to those stories a bunch, and it's really interesting to go back and see what the non-official canon stories they were making in the 70s were.
Wow. Fan fiction.
I mean, they were officially licensed, but essentially they seemed like fan fiction.
I may have encountered 1 or 2 and said, okay, no.
Well, if you do listen to some, we can talk about it next time. But if not, no worries. I understand. And we'll right now, we're not recording very often. I think we've only got 2 recording dates set for March. So it's probably going to be a couple of months before we're ready to do another one of these. But
sounds good.
Thank you very much, Barbara.
Thank you so much. All right, take care. Bye-bye, Jimmy.
Bye.